Welcome, everyone. Today, I have the honor of interviewing Rob Shallenberger. He is the CEO of Becoming Your Best Global Leadership. He is also a former F-16 pilot, which I was intrigued to learn more about. I don't know if we're going to get to talk about it today, but I am excited to have Rob here today. It sounds like he's done a lot of research and has some publications on really prioritizing your time and what the most effective leaders do to be peak performers, was my understanding. So today we're going to talk a little bit about an upcoming conference that he has that people might be interested in, the Association for Talent Development community, and what that's going to be covering. So yeah, Rob, tell me a little bit about what you're going to be speaking on.
Yeah, so it's this coming Monday, and I believe the date's November, what is that, 13, 14, 15, 16, whatever this coming Monday is. So we're meeting with the ATD chapter there in Houston. So I'm excited to get to know a lot of those faces. Some of you I met at previous ATD conferences. And this is going to be a game-changing, time that we have together. And that's a pretty bold statement to say that. But I know the power of the principles and habits that we're going to cover. And what we're going to focus on are 3 habits that will help us do what matters most and prioritize our time. And the reason this is such a big deal, Scott, I think we can all, relate to this to some degree or another, that, there's so many demands on our time. For so many people, they're being asked to do more with less. And with COVID, that adds another unique layer because, working from the home environment, now you've got to balance, work, life, and then home and all of these things, kids. So there's just a lot of challenges and demands on our time. And so amidst all of that stuff that's going on, how does a person really prioritize their time and do what matters most? 3 habits that we're going to cover will directly impact someone's performance and productivity, both personally and professionally, which means our health, our relationships, and our promise is, and it's a bold promise, is that these 3 habits, when applied, will increase performance and productivity by at least 30 to 50%. You mentioned I was a fighter pilot. That was an amazing experience. Had the chance to fly F-16s and work with Air Force One for 11 years. And, going straight up to 50,000 feet, there's nothing like that in the world. It was awesome. At the same time, this was a high-performance culture. Fighter pilots were great to work with because when you gave them something to do, they would do it, and they would do it well. And they would do it on time or ahead of schedule. And if you take that to our flight, every time we'd go fly, our performance expectation was perfection. Now, we never had the perfect flight. Never. We always made mistakes in the air. And that's why we'd come back, and after every flight, we would debrief. And we would debrief so that we could, generate results that would help us repeat successes and eliminate failures. That didn't change our expectation, though. Our expectation was still the perfect flight, yet we never achieved that. And so we'd continue to debrief and work towards that. Well, this was the culture. It was a high-performance culture. It was fun to be a part of. People enjoyed being there, productive. And so when I left that world, I wanted to take that same concept to the business world. And so while I was doing that, my father at the same time was already researching a group of people who we would label as the top 10% or high performers in their respective industries. So I joined him in that research, and what we were looking for was, what are the habits and principles that the top 10% focus on? And it's interesting, Scott, because I think we need to acknowledge that all of us have challenges, right? Nobody's perfect.
Right.
If you could peel back the onion in every one of our lives, whether it's a relationship, finances, anxiety, whatever, there's just so many things out there. We all have challenges. Yet, as we looked at these people who had risen to the top of their fields, whether it's sales, athletes, managers, it was very clear that certain habits and principles predicted success. And so that's what we put in our first book, is what we found in that research, which is that there are 12 principles of highly successful leaders. And that's what we started training on around the world. We built a certification program around that.
Right.
It was a leadership certification, and it was awesome. Now, from that...
How long ago was this, Rob?
So this was about 7 years ago, is when we released that and started training around the world on that. And we've focused on that topic in ATD conferences, the 12 principles of highly successful leaders. And that was all awesome, and it still is. And we still continue to train on that. Well, several years ago, 3 of those principles that are directly tied to performance and productivity continue to stand out and resonate with people and organizations. And so we thought, there's a lot more research to be done in these 3 specific principles that tie directly to performance and productivity. Now, I keep using those words. I'm talking about our personal lives as well.
Right.
We all want to be successful in the professional side, but far more important is what's happening with our health,
family, and our
home life.
Absolutely.
Yes. So we started doing all of this additional research within organizations, We interviewed and researched more than 1,260 different managers from all different industries.
Wait, 1,260?
Correct.
How long did that take?
Several years.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. Because I mean, I've been reading Good to Great for years, and like just the time it would take to do case studies, and that's incredible.
Several years. And so, and we're talking about from every culture here, you know, from South Africa to the Philippines to South and Central America, of course, the United States and Canada and so on.
Huh.
And it was fascinating. Here's some of the things we found in there, Scott. 68% of people feel like prioritizing their time is their number one challenge.
Number one challenge.
Number one. And that kind of goes back to what we were just talking about at the beginning is, you know, there's all these demands on our time. We're being asked to do more with less. It's creating a lot of anxiety and stress, and it's having actually a big impact on productivity without us many times realizing it. Yeah. 80% of those same people did not have a process to prioritize their time. And 84% of them felt like if they had a process, that it would have a big impact in both their personal and professional lives in doing what matters most. You know, and more directly to some of the words that we hear, vision, goals, only 2% of people in the workforce have a written personal vision. Only 10% of the workforce has written personal and professional goals that are impactful to them and that they reference often. So there's a big gap when we're talking about performance and productivity and doing what matters most. So now I'm going to answer your question into what those 3 habits are. And these 3 habits are what are going to be in our new book that's going to be released in May of 2021, titled Do What Matters Most. And here are the 3 habits. So number 1 is developing a written personal vision.
Written personal.
This is something, when you hear the word vision, this is something that most of us have heard a lot about through our lives. I mean, how many conferences have we attended and places have we been where people say, find your purpose, find your why, find your passion, find your vision. But no one really, to my knowledge, ever says, here's how you do it. And so for the most part, people are kind of left hanging, hence why only 2% of people have a written personal vision. And imagine this, Scott. I mean, imagine the power that flows in when someone can articulate what that vision looks like, and it serves as an internal compass and a guide.
Oh my
God. We're either in alignment with it or we're out of alignment.
And I've been setting personal goals. I mean, I could speak to this. I've been, you know, coaching for 16 years. And so I've worked with that top 10% in various industries. And yeah, I mean, having that clarity, it's almost like the company mission statement, right? How defined and true to yourself is that statement?
Yeah, that's exactly it. You know, we all talk about the importance of a vision for a team. Well, wouldn't it be important to have a vision for our own lives?
100%.
And the thing is, our vision doesn't have to change the world. It just has to change our world. And so that's the first habit of those 3 that we'll start talking about on Monday, which is how do you develop a written personal vision that is meaningful and gives us direction in our lives? And not just professionally. I'm talking about as a parent, a vision in the role of spouse, a vision in our personal role. Maybe it's a son or daughter or brother or sister. So it's very expansive and encompasses each of our important roles in life. The second habit, and you just mentioned it, Scott, is to set what we've trademarked as a term called roles and goals. In other words, what are our different roles? We've just established a vision for each role. Now, how do we identify 1 to 4 specific measurable goals within each role that give us a clear target? In other words, how are we moving towards doing what matters most and achieving our vision? And just to be able to take all these intentions that are floating around in our brain and to put those on paper and create a clear target is so empowering. And it really helps a person get laser focused in on truly what matters most.
Yeah.
So habit 1, develop a written personal vision. Habit 2, set roles and goals for the year. Habit number 3, and it's the one that I would consider to be the most important habit, and it's why all 3 of these habits come together and really on their own are still powerful. It's when they're brought together, they create a chemistry of excellence, that they really are life-changing. And that's the habit that we call...
I love that.
What's that?
I love that visual analogy, the chemistry of excellence.
Oh, yeah. It is. It's really a chemistry between these 3 coming together. The third habit is what we call pre-week planning. And this is the most important habit of all of these habits. And it's literally taken us thousands of hours to develop this and create a process that's simple, that people can actually use, and that really does have an impact across every area of their lives. So even a person that has a vision and goals, you know, roles and goals, that's great. We're still talking about now how do you take this down to the daily and weekly level where it really matters? How do we show up for ourselves? How do we show up for our team? How about for our children and for our spouse? That doesn't just happen by accident. You know, there's a phrase that we use I'll use it on Monday, and it's that we will either lead a life by design or we will live a life by default. So we can either get very intentional in what we call Q2, or we can just day to day and wing it. And winging it gets winging it results. We would never wing it as a fighter pilot and expect to stay alive.
Right. Yeah.
So it takes very intentional planning to mission plan a flight. It's the same concept. So we have a vision, we have our roles and goals, and pre-week planning takes the vision, our roles and goals for the year, and takes it down to that daily, weekly level with the same concept. So every week, and we have a Becoming Your Best Planner and all the tools to do this. I'll walk through the process on Monday, which is what are our roles and what matters most this week in each role, and when will we do it? In other words, rather than being reactive, we're now being very proactive and leading a life by design.
Exactly.
And we've researched this. I mean, we've literally put in, Scott, thousands of hours of research into this. You know, I mentioned the number of people, and these are individually talked about, but to our knowledge, we've never found a way or a process that brings all three of these habits together and really aligns someone's lives from the vision to their roles and goals and our daily focus on what matters most, our daily and weekly focus on what matters most through pre-week planning.
And that's what your company does?
That's what we do. Yep. So we focus on the 12 principles of highly successful leaders. That's the leadership training. And then the other certification that people get certified on and train and do with their companies is this Do What Matters Most training, which is life-changing. And that's why, you know, I said my promise is that the implementation of these habits will increase performance and productivity by 30 to 50%. And I'll explain this on Monday. A person that implements these three habits will, on average, do 1,000 additional things that they wouldn't have otherwise done every year with significantly lower stress. And that's why, you know, I continue to say it's a game changer, and it really is. There's a lady named...
Yeah, just to speak on this for myself, because I work with a business coach for years. I've been in the coaching space. I see the value of it. I've always been, you know, an overachiever type of personality. And so I want to say, you know, to the top of my mind, I definitely had two of the three that you're talking about to some effect. One was like I had yearly goals, right? So I had, these are the things I want to get done, you know, mostly in my business at the time. And then I had, for like 3 years now, I've had a routine where every Sunday, you know, I go through what I learned, you know, that week, what my accomplishments are. Like I have a process, and then I prioritize what I need to focus on for the week. And I do that before I put my calendar together. And then so everything else, you know, if it doesn't match with that stuff, then I'm not going to do it, or I try to find the time to do it. So, I mean, that has been 100% game changer. And I've found myself too, you know, the people that I looked up to in business that were just ultra successful and seemed to have a better balance were really good about telling me what their priorities and directions were, whereas other people weren't.
Yeah. Do you mind if I share a story real quick with you? Would that be all right? You know, there's a saying that we'll use on Monday when we do this live on the webinar, which is what these three habits, these Do What Matters Most habits, will help us do is to schedule our priorities rather than prioritize our schedule. It's a whole different lens through which we look at our life. So rather than the to-do list, you know, which is good, all of that is good. It's just enhancing it and making it better. So rather than being this reactive planning, we're very intentional about saying, as a mother or as a father, what matters most this week in that role? How about personally? How do we show up for ourselves this week? What matters this week to take care of ourselves mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and physically, and so on in our other roles? We did this with the executives of Pepsi. And one of these executives, it was about a 3-hour, 4-hour workshop. And one of the executives went through each one of these practicing, and he got to pre-week planning. And as he was going through his week in the role of father, he wrote, "Call my son." And we asked him, well, why is that a big deal? You know, I mean, cool, that's great. Why? And he said, well, because 7 years ago, my son and I got into an argument and we haven't talked since. Now, this executive looked like he was in his low 60s, high 50s, kind of graying hair. So, you know, seasoned. He's been around for a while. And we're like, whoa, that's a big deal. You haven't talked with your son in 7 years. And we asked him, well, when are you going to do it? Wednesday, 7 o'clock. Great. 6 months later, we were back there and, you know, we saw him. We'd hoped he made the call. And my father asked him, hey, how did it go? Did you make the call? And he said, you know, something along the lines of this. He said, I was scared to death to pick up the phone that night. Because obviously he's thinking about, is my son going to talk with me?
Right.
But he goes on to say, I picked up the phone, I made the call, and it was amazing because as soon as we started talking, we couldn't even remember what we had argued about 7 years ago.
Wow.
And now we talk every week and we're best friends. And what's even more amazing about that is he discovered on that call that he had 2 grandchildren who he didn't know existed. Now, you could look at this 2 ways. One, you could say, what a tragedy that it took him this long to make the call. But another way to look at that is, what a blessing that he actually then did prioritize and made that call and will be able to be involved in his son's life and his grandchildren's life.
Yeah.
And in his own words, Scott, he said, I would have never made that call had it not been for pre-week planning. And I don't think he's that different than most of us in different ways, whether it's health, all these things. It's like, I need to call my son, but I'll just do it tomorrow or next week.
Right.
And he just kept procrastinating it, and suddenly it had been 7 years. And so that's why these 3 habits are indeed life-changing and will have a huge impact on both the personal and professional side of our lives.
Yeah, and you know what? Just to speak to that, I mean, I'm getting goosebumps because what I've found personally, like over and over again, is that when I'm able to really connect with my soul on what's important to me, it feels like almost without a doubt the universe supports it. And
Yeah.
I can't explain it other than the times align that are meant to align with whatever it is I need to do. So it's like, if that's the time I need to call my son or whoever, they pick up. You know, not every time, but I'm always amazed at how things just flow so much better when I really prioritize the things that I need to do. And I'm telling the world this is what's most important to me, and the world is like, we're gonna block this time out for you, Scott. It's really amazing. That's been my experience. Have you found that for yourself? And with
Yeah. I've been doing this, what we're talking about, I've been using these habits for 22 years. And across the board, people will say the same thing I felt. You know, anxiety goes down. Your focus on your relationships goes up, which means your relationships improve, your finances improve. The feeling inside of us changes. We feel connected to a purpose. You know, we're excited to wake up in the morning. So I've experienced this. I've seen it happen with thousands of other people and across the board. And I know that we only have, 4 minutes left. This goes pretty quick, doesn't it?
Right. Yeah.
I'll just leave it there. I'll say this. On Monday, we're going to walk through each one of these and how to do them, with the whole chapter, whoever is participating. There's a quote that we start with, and it goes like this: good, better, best, never let it rest, till the good is better and the better is best. If we have an open mindset and we're willing, these habits, what we call a skill set, can be very powerful. And so becoming your best is a mindset and a skill set. The mindset side is the willingness, the humility, and the skill set side of course, the how-to, if you will. And both of these come together to help us lead a life by design. And so on Monday, we're going to look at our lives and say, how can we take where we are today, which in many cases might be good, and how do we get better in this quest for what our best looks like? Kind of like that fighter pilot, that quest for perfection, which we know we'll never attain, but it doesn't change the target. And so that's the spirit in which I hope that we'll come to this on Monday with, is good, better, best. Wherever we are today, how can these 3 habits help us do what matters most and take where we are today and make us better? So I'm excited about Monday, and for whoever joins us, it will be a great.
And hey, Rob, it was such a pleasure to have you. I can't wait. So I'm looking forward to this, and thank you for your time.
Well, thank you, Scott, and hopefully we'll see a lot of you on Monday. And between now and then, have a great weekend.